That sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen,
wrestling has more than one royal family.
I am my kingdom! I am my kingdom!
The Briscoes, the greatest tag team in Ring of Honor history. Individually, you have Mark Briscoe, who developed his chicken persona and his redneck kung fu. Then you have his older brother, Mark Briscoe, who pretty much is the guy I believe should be the Ric Flair, aka John Cena, for Ring of Honor. You know, the guy that when somebody leaves, he's there to be next up and hold on to that world title and do it in dominant fucking kick-ass fashion. On the other side, you've got a team I once had high hopes for, the Gorillas of Destiny. I mean, they're the sons of Haku. And when Tongaloa was in WWE, I enjoyed the hell out of him. He didn't get very far up the card, but I was enjoying what he was doing. And then you've got his older brother, Tama Tonga, who has the potential to be the greatest defensive wrestler since the Rated R Superstar, and is athletic as hell. And yet, coming into the match at Manhattan Mayhem, I am trepidatious because of how terrible G-O-D, the Gorillas of Destiny, have been. They call themselves God, but one wonders, the God of what? And one had to answer prior to last Saturday, the God of lies, because them being gods was simply that. But then they brought it to the Briscoes in a New York street fight at Manhattan Mayhem. The eighth one of those, and one that main event certainly lived up to its name. They were the God of war. They were the God of hell. They were kicking the Briscoes' ass all over the place. But then they took it a step too far. They hit Mark Briscoe with a magic killer onto a stack of chairs in the middle of the ring. And they said to Briscoe the Younger, "What do you say to the God of death?" And the chicken didn't cross the road. The chicken didn't run. What the chicken did was say, "Not today, motherfuckers." Welcome to Kingdom of Honor. This is your host, Shane Sabunia, along with my good buddy Jeff. What you got, Jeff?
I sense a little anger out of you today. A little more than usual.
Oh no, that
Everything
match got
okay?
me super pumped up, dude.
Everything okay over there? You
And I
can
love
make
that
it.
line. And I love that line from Game of Thrones. I was happy I was able to use it on the show. So
You had to shoehorn that in any way possible, didn't you?
I've waited months to do so, my friend.
It happens. So anyway, good. Life is good. Get shameless plug out of the way. Go to check out our Patreon site. For $10, you get full access. For $1, you can support your boys here. It's patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. Wow, I'm already slurring my speech.
Well, you know, taking in a bottle of Captain Morgan prior to the show starting will do that for you.
Jesus, I wish. That's just, I wake up like this. I can't talk.
You know, there's so much stuff going on, at least in my head, that I don't even know where to start. So I'm just gonna, I guess I'll just start with this and get this out of the way. So, you and I have been wondering what happened to the Dirty Blondes, right?
Right.
And I was listening to Busted Open today, where they were interviewing the Von Erichs.
Okay.
Ross and Marshall, and they were asking them. Bully asked them specifically, who was a great fit for your style, and I immediately, of course, thought of the team we're covering today, the Briscoes, because the Briscoes, with their brawling style against the Von Erichs with their brawling style, would just be amazing.
Yeah, I don't think so. I can't see that.
Okay.
But anyway, continue.
But they said, there were so many great teams out there, it's hard to pick somebody, but they had a great match against the Dirty Blondes.
Oh,
in an organization that I didn't even know existed. And it's called, get this, World Class Revolution.
Well, in all fairness, there are so many different promotions out there. How can we keep track of them all? I just Google every now and then, just because I'm bored. Maybe I'm caught up, which is so rare, but it does happen occasionally, where I'm caught up on everything going on. So I'll Google a new promotion just to see what's out there. And there are so many that we don't cover, that nobody covers. So it's not surprising that, they faced each other in this one-off promotion, but it is surprising to hear them say that their best match or their dream match was the Dirty Blondes. I agree the Dirty Blondes were great, but not on the level of dream match.
Well, they didn't necessarily say a dream match. I might have phrased that wrong. But my point about World Class Revolution is, and I know I'm an asshole, Jeff. We already know that. But they've got all 9 episodes of their show up on YouTube. And we should start covering them.
Let me add it to my list. What was it? World Class Revolution?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going there now. I'm going to save their site, so I've got it in my subscriptions with all the other wrestling promotions I have in my subscriptions, and if I ever get to it, I will get to it.
No, you misunderstand me. I'm saying we have nothing major coming up this week, so we should watch the first 4 or 5 episodes.
Nothing major? Have you seen our schedule?
Well, I mean, we have AAA Mania coming up this weekend, but I'm not going to get a chance to watch it. It's on,
right.
It's on, and I don't even know if it's being televised on Twitch. They haven't announced it yet. So,
aren't they going to be on Ring of Honor Club?
No, because AAA is not the same thing as CMLL.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
So anyway, that was my revelation of the week. Is that and they've also got guys like Jack Swagger there, and they got a whole ton of guys there. So.
All right, for the record, I am subscribed now to World Class Revolution. They have 8 episodes out.
Okay. I
will be binge watching this weekend.
Awesome.
Well, this week. Yeah, because. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. If you have more.
No, I was gonna jump on you about saying that Tongaloa was ever in the WWE. He never made it past NXT, so that doesn't count.
No, he was on SmackDown for a while.
When?
He was trying to think what his name was there, but yeah, he was definitely on SmackDown. He was even in a tag team on SmackDown for a while.
Well, that's right. He and Hunico in the pre-show Money in the Bank was the closest they ever got.
To be on a pay-per-view, yeah, but they were still on SmackDown.
To being on any live show, they were in a dark event, a dark match in Money in the Bank.
I swear to God, I watched him wrestle on SmackDown.
He did once on Main Event with Hunico, their first ever televised tag team match.
On Main Event, then.
God, he was around he last feuded with Adam Rose in NXT, and he was released in June of 2014.
Wait. Speaking of that, guess who got to slap hands with Adam Rose yesterday?
I don't want to. Weren't you going to go off on that? And I wanted to go to that show, but I just couldn't come up with the money. So, but you were gonna talk a little bit about that. You might as well get that out of the way here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Adam Rose was there. Victoria was there. Did you ever go to one of the Hibbing shows around here or Chisholm shows and see Darren Corbin?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You remember how he would, how he would come to the ring in the green outfit and it would have like the scrolling letters across it years before Chris Jericho did?
Yep.
Well, not anymore, brother. Now he's a heel. He's the leader of a
Of course
stable
he is.
called Settle for Nothing, and he came into the show as the heavy on wrestling champion.
Really?
Yeah, he didn't leave as the champion. Yeah, he actually
What
came out and interrupted Sting's opening speech.
Sting.
Yeah,
Sting was here.
Sting was here. Yeah.
And I wasn't getting constant messages saying, what the hell, why aren't you here?
No, because I knew what was going on with you, and I knew you needed some peace this weekend.
Well, I didn't need peace by Sunday night. I needed wrestling. By Sunday night, all I cared about was wrestling. So,
Yeah. So I mean, I got a picture with Ultimo Dragon and Sonny Ono.
yeah, I saw that and I was so pissed. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, that motherfucker, because I recognized Sonny Ono, so I just assumed the guy next to him was Ultimo Dragon, even though I didn't recognize him without the full getup.
Yeah.
But I definitely recognized Sonny Ono.
Yeah, Victoria Victoria missed me by an inch when she went to swing for my hand, so that kind of sucked.
Oh man,
I know. ODB was there. Tito Santana was there. Honky Tonk and Greg Valentine and Jimmy Hart were there. Actually, Honky Tonk and Greg Valentine teamed up with Colt Cabana, and they called themselves Rhythm and Boom.
Rhythm and Boom.
Yeah.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And people talk a lot about independent wrestling, and I've actually been asked, why do you like all these independent promotions instead of the big shows? And I mean, I like the big shows. I like the athletes that are in them, but in all honesty, I would rather watch an independent card with a bunch of nobodies and has-beens simply because of that reason. When are you ever going to get that close to Honky Tonk Man?
Yeah, that's a good point. Did I ever tell you
So-
that my son and daughter rode an elevator with Honky and Greg Valentine 10 years ago?
Okay, Honky seems to be everywhere.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't talk to them, but they said Valentine was nice saying hi and stuff, but Honky just ignored them.
Well, I met Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine.
Wait. No, if you're talking about Brutus Beefcake on the podcast, you have to say Brutus the fucking barber Beefcake.
No, I don't, because he sucks.
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe I'll call him the disciple.
Well, that's
How
what
about
that's what Conrad Thompson always calls him. So.
Well, that's because that's when he was at his worst. But regardless, anyway, I want to say it was like 89 maybe, and I ran into both of them at a hotel in Minneapolis.
Both of who?
Greg Valentine and Brutus, the Dream Team
Oh, that's
from
cool.
WWF.
That's cool.
And before he was the barber. And they were just hanging out, just having a good time in the hotel, and we were there for some conference my parents went to. But that was one of my favorite childhood memories, because it was right after I saw them at WrestleMania 3. Right after Valentine walked out on him and Jimmy Hart walked out on him and he became the barber.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a surreal moment, because I just saw them at WrestleMania and they were doing a show in the cities. We were down there for a conference and we just happened to be at the same hotel. And I rode the elevator up with them. And of course I was 10 years old, so I'm just there shaking, not wanting to say anything to these guys, but they were still really, really cool. They saw me with my parents and realized, and really played up to the kid. Let's just put it that way. It was me and my sister, and they really played up to the children, like they were trying to get. You would expect people on that level to be dicks to anybody, kids or not, just kind of be in their own little world. But they went out of their way to make just joke around and have fun with me and my sister. And I was 10, my sister was 8.
That's really cool.
So yeah, it really was. It was really cool.
That's gotta be a really cool memory for you. Thank you for sharing it with us.
I wish I could remember more of it.
Let's see, who else was at this show? So Mr. Anderson was there, who I've spoken with before, in Houston as well. And the interesting thing was he was announced as Mr. Ken Anderson, but when he did his microphone thing, he said Mr. Kennedy.
Did he really?
He did.
He went back to the Kennedy thing?
He did.
Is he still as whacked out as he was? Because he's one of those few guys in the world that I hear stories of, and I'm actually concerned.
He looked kind of rough.
Did he? Shit. He's one of those few guys. Like you hear stories about Scott Hall and Jake Roberts and how they found everything with Diamond Dallas Page, and I hear similar stories about Ken Anderson, and I've never heard where he's found his place, where he's found his Zen or whatever and gotten over his demons. But so he's kind of one of those guys that stays in the forefront of my mind because I really, really want that guy to get help. If that's what he chooses, I guess. I can't force him to.
Yeah, I agree. Can't force anybody to do anything, but it's, hopefully he wasn't, on anything while he was wrestling, because that would, while he was actually in the ring, I should say, because that would, put everybody in danger.
Well, it's even like, if you think about Jeff Hardy, when he had his incident at Bound for Glory, and you hear things about how well he's been doing and how great everything has been for him, and then to hear what happened to him over I think it was last weekend, not as in 2 days ago or yesterday, but the weekend before, where he got arrested for driving under the influence.
Oh, I didn't even know about that. I heard one of the
Oh, yeah.
Usos did it. I didn't know Hardy did, though.
Yeah, the Usos did. Hardy was public intoxication is what it was. But for a guy like Jeff Hardy, who he's been battling for a long, long time, to hear that he actually is still fighting those demons is kind of hard to hear.
Yeah, because I thought we had heard that he'd gotten cleaned up and everything, and something. But I mean, of course, it is a disease, and you're fighting it every single day of your life, and it doesn't take much, for that for somebody like that to fall off the wagon.
Well, and it's I don't want to speak on.
You and I have that gene in our families.
Yeah, and I don't really want to speak on it too much because I don't understand exactly what those demons are. What drives people. I know personally what drives me to what I do. And yes, I'm running my water again. I know what I know what drives me to those demons. So I can kind of understand to a point what these guys go through, but once you start down that road and you get to that addiction point, it's one of the hardest things in the world to overcome. Yeah. And when guys have overcome it, more power to them. You look at people like Road Dogg and Shawn Michaels is another one. These guys were able to overcome those demons and never go back to them, and it's really a great thing to see. But then you see people like Jeff Hardy, who I thought was on the up and up, but then he got arrested for public intoxication. So it's kind of like, is that a slip up, or is that him going back to those things that ruined his life?
Yeah, and also, was it a one-time? You're right. Was it a one-time thing where it was just alcohol, or was it more than that involved?
Right.
And honestly, it's none of our business. But definitely we want it to not be something that's going to ruin the rest of his life, and the rest of the life of his family too. He's got a wife, he's got kids,
and a brother and parents, and I think they have other siblings too, don't they? I thought they had a sister, but regardless, I mean, it's a horrible. No, not Sister Abigail. Jesus.
Oh, okay.
Regardless, and I don't want to get this into a public platform and start talking about addiction and all that. Maybe I'll do another podcast of that because Lord knows I have experience. But it's always a rough time when you hear people, especially like you and me, who have histories of that in our families, and me personally in my own life. It's hard to hear somebody else go through that. It really, truly is. And it's, before I realized all the issues that were going on with my parents and myself, I would hear somebody is an alcoholic and be like, so that's their own thing. But after experiencing all that myself, it brings on a whole different genre, or I can't even think of the word, but aura to whatever you're talking about. And if Jeff Hardy did slip, all the love in the world to him. I hope that he finds what he needs to find to get past that, because I'd hate to see him in an early grave. And same thing for Ken Anderson. I've heard he's been in a rough spot for a long, long time. And I just pray that he finds what he needs to find to get past those things.
Very well said. Our hearts go out, sympathy goes out to those guys. However, I have no sympathy whatsoever for the Uso that did the DUI.
Yeah, that was wrong. What happened with him was something that I can't, as much as I know about addictions, I can't forgive what he did.
No, and it's obviously when you are under the influence of alcohol, your judgment is impaired, and you may not realize you shouldn't be driving. On the other hand, when you do get behind the wheel of that car, first of all, you could have chosen to give your keys up before you started drinking. Secondly, in my opinion, that's attempted murder. And,
right.
And I really don't understand why the law is so lax on DUI and DWI. I mean, it seems like you have to get, 3 or 4 of them before you get any real jail time or anything, or you have to actually kill somebody before something like that happens. And I really am opposed to that.
Well, I will say this, and we're kind of going off on a more serious topic here and getting away from the wrestling for a few seconds, but I will say this: I witnessed my father, who had at one point 11 DWIs, and this is the 80s, so it was a whole different time. But I remember witnessing all that he went through, and at this point in my life, I'm 45 years old now. So looking back and seeing what he did and what he went through, I just thank God that he never ran over anybody or killed anybody.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sorry to bring it all down with the drug talk here. Let's get back to what you witnessed.
Yeah, I mean, and really, it was a pretty good show. I mean, there was a Heritage Rumble on there where the winner got a future world title shot, and there was kind of a lame heel turn at the end of it. But I mean, that was really the worst match on the card. Another, we got to see Airwolf, got to see some fun stuff, and I really had a good time there. So that's probably it. And speaking of having a good time at a wrestling show, as we know, I'm going to All Out in about a month with my wife and a friend of mine. And just yesterday, my friend Kevin and I decided for sure that we're also going to go to the Joey Janela's after party of All Out. And that makes me wish even more that you could have gone with us, Jeff. I mean, really, I was thinking about this, and I'm like, I really wish I was going to this with Jeff, because we could do a lot of networking. We could meet a lot of wrestlers we're fans of. Get pictures with them, get autographs with them, rub elbows with them, and just have a great time at the show together. So hopefully at some point, your finances and your custody situation will work itself out, and we'll be able to go to one of these shows together.
Oh, I'm sure it'll happen. At some point it will. I've got things going in the right directions now with just, I finally closed on this house, so that whole stress is over. I own this house, and things are working out with me and my kids and all that stuff and their mothers. So hopefully this will, this time next year we'll be talking about going to it together.
Yeah. I mean, and if not, we know that AEW is going to be a traveling show, so maybe maybe one Wednesday night we'll be able to take a day off work and go to one of the live shows together.
And even if I don't get to go to Chicago for one or for this one, I'm at least going to watch it and enjoy it in the privacy of my own home.
Yep. Just like All In. So.
Right. Exactly. Well, yeah, that wasn't the privacy, but at that point, it didn't matter.
And speaking of All Out, so I had a couple of topics of that show I wanted to bring up as well. So, we had one of our loyal listeners, Ryan Evans. He was tweeting about, a report that came out that quoted CM Punk as saying, he was texted about signing a contract. He really thinks that should be a face-to-face conversation. Blah 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 blah. And Ryan, basically asked, if we'd like to see CM Punk in AEW. And I'm going to say that my opinion on that has gone 180 degrees in the last few months. The reason for that, Dean Ambrose / John Moxley. To me, you've already got a guy that would bring exactly what CM Punk would bring, who's younger, who's hungrier, who had the same type of experiences in WWE but didn't let himself become completely bitter about them, and who I think can bring almost everything to the table that CM Punk can, if not more. So to me, CM Punk at this point would just be kind of redundant for the AEW roster. So
I don't know if you're.
So I mean, I'd like to see him maybe show up in Impact, but I would not like to see him in AEW at this point.
I don't know if you saw the tweet that I sent back to Ryan, but my thing is he's. And I'm not saying anything against CM Punk. I don't know the guy. I honestly am only going by hearsay. But the hearsay that I have is he has been known to embellish the truth. There was that whole lawsuit against the doctor that came to light on Cole Cabana's show, and I know he and Colt are friends, but it turned out that was an embellishment. And you're right, yeah, he did embellish some things about Cole Cabana too that ended up ruining their friendship. And it's all hearsay. I have no proof. I'm not going to claim to have proof. I'm not trying to disparage the guy because honestly, as a professional, the times that he had, I loved watching him. He brought a lot of joy to my heart. But I know from just the scoops and the amount of people that no longer like the guy that he has been known to embellish things from time to time. We all have. Not a big deal. The problem is, I think my main problem is, would I love to see CM Punk again? Absolutely. But I don't think at this time AEW really needs to add anybody to their roster. Serious, plain and simple. They have a great roster. They have a bunch of people that can't even make it onto the pay-per-views right now. I just think that they should continue on the way that they're doing with the guys that they have, build up the stars that they have, and then maybe add some more to that. I just don't know that CM Punk is the right guy to add to that.
Yeah, you don't need to have a 60-man roster like WCW had in the latter stages and 2 shows to try to cram them all on, and it's not necessary.
Or what WWE has now.
True.
They have so many people on the roster they can't even get people on the weekly shows. Where I'm scared that AEW is already approaching that point, and they haven't had a show yet.
Well, and maybe that's okay. Maybe they just have to earn their spots on the weekly shows. Although how do you earn your spots on the weekly shows if you're not going to be on the weekly shows? So
exactly,
it's kind of a catch-22.
I would rather see a handful of superstars and a handful of jobbers than 60 legitimate guys that need to be on the shows that are never making them.
Yeah. Agreed.
I mean, when you look at people, and I don't want to turn this into another WWE rant, but when you look at people like the Major Brothers and how over Zack Ryder got and how Kurt Hawkins left WWE and got over again, to a point where they brought him back, and now they're not even on TV, and they're the tag team champions. It makes no sense to me. I just can't understand anything that's going on there.
Well, I don't want to. I really don't care to understand anything that's going on in that organization.
That's fair enough.
I mean, if you still want to, that's great. And like I've said before, like if I hear that there's months in a row of great programming, and Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff have really turned everything around, then I might be interested in it. And honestly, the rumor of Charlotte versus Trish Stratus has me a little bit interested. But for the most part, I really still want nothing to do with that organization. Did I lose you? So it appears that I lost Jeff because Skype is sending me a ringing signal. Let me see if I can get him back. Are you there, Jeff? Alright, I'm going to end this call and try to ring him again. So if you love technical issues, folks, guess what? You're getting a technical issue from us this week. It's so weird. So here I am trying to connect with him, and yeah, I mean, basically, you know, I am intrigued by the idea of Charlotte and or facing a returning Trish Stratus in Toronto. I think it'd be a good attraction. I think it'd be a good match. You know, and I really don't have any problem with them putting that together. You know, Trish is someone who's not come back much. You know, she's come back. I think she was back maybe for one of the matches at Revolution. And you know, of course, we didn't watch that show. And she was, and I think she was back. I know she was back for the Women's Royal Rumble, the first one. And you know, that's pretty much it. And you know, I don't want it to be like a Goldberg situation, you know, where he or the Undertaker, you know, got injured. So I don't want that to happen to, you know, with Charlotte or Trish. But you know, if Trish is in good shape, you know, we know Charlotte's a really good worker. So to see those guys, you know, together would probably not be a bad match. So I hope anybody that's watching SummerSlam, they get that and they enjoy it. And it still says Jeff is offline, so I'm trying to connect him again. Because he's asking me if we lost him, but or if they lost me, but we lost him. So I have no idea what's going on. Let's try again.
Well, that was interesting.
It was interesting. I was still just talking about how I do think that Trish and Charlotte would be an interesting match for SummerSlam.
Yeah, I do too. I just don't know how much of Trish there still is.
Yeah, I said if she's still, you know, in decent shape, and we know Charlotte's a good worker, so it should be good if that's the case. But I really don't want it to turn into, you know, a Goldberg Undertaker type situation.
Right. And I guess I haven't seen her. Well, she was in that Rumble not too long ago, so.
Yeah, and I couldn't remember if she was at Revolution or not, or Evolution or not, because I don't think either one of us watched that show. So.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know. I know she was in the Rumble match, but outside of that, I'm not sure.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up on AEW was, I know, it was something else I didn't want to about after thinking about it a little bit yesterday. You and I had talked about the world title match, and we had basically agreed with each other that Chris Jericho should be the guy leaving as the AEW world champion, right?
Right.
Listen to this idea. So what if Hangman Page leaves as the AEW world champion, but does not leave with the belt, and never gets the belt? So what I'm talking about is Hangman wins the match, and then Jericho just goes crazy again. Like, you know, you ungrateful, stupid promotion, you should have made me the champion to start with, and he just beats the living hell out of Page. You know, chairs, tables, Page leaves a bloody mess, Jericho leaves with the belt. And then for months on TV, again, you know, Page just can't get the belt back from Jericho, and they finally have a match to decide it. Page is the rightful champion, but he never actually holds the belt. And then Jericho wins a match again for the title. And so then Page has actually had some heat for being the champion and never actually being able to hold the title. And he gets built up a little bit that way, but then he has to fight his way up to the top again, like maybe, say, 2 or 3 for another 2 years or so before he finally actually gets a chance to be the champion and to hold that title.
I'd rather see him chasing it than to go for a convoluted mess like that.
See, the reason that I disagree with that is because what would happen that would allow him to be the one chasing it if he loses? You know, I mean, we already know that they've done a terrible job building him up.
Right.
To me, this is the way to build him up without him actually being able to hold that title. You know, with Jericho claiming he's the rightful champion and then proving it by beating him in a match down the road for it. And then he's got somewhere to start with, and he's got some heat going into another feud against somebody else.
Yeah, I guess that does make sense. I guess I don't know. They've done such a bad job of building him up, but I could still see him as a number one contender if Jericho were to win the match and then Page go through a couple of obstacles, like having to face MJF and having to face whoever else to get back to that number one contender spot. Then I could see that. The only problem is I think whoever wins this match, their next match is going to be against Moxley.
Yeah, whoever wins versus Moxley and Omega. I agree.
Right.
And
so
see, and the reason that I like my idea is because Page is still chasing, even though he's technically the champion.
Yeah, true. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how it plays out. I think that could turn into a horribly overbooked mess very easily if it's done right. That does make a lot of sense, but I really truly believe it could turn into just a mess in a hurry.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. It probably could, but I trust Cody and the Bucks booking. So
right.
So
maybe.
I guess I'll go with whatever they do. It's just, but that was my idea. Anything else to say about that?
No.
Okay, so here's the topic that I meant to bring up last week and I forgot to, and you said that I wouldn't remember this week, and I said I'll take it as a personal challenge. So here it is. You told me about 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer, that you absolutely hate 3 Stages of Hell matches.
Yeah.
And your 2 favorite, or at least 2 of your favorite matches from this year, if they're not your 2 favorite matches, are Johnny Gargano versus Adam Cole.
Yes.
And those 2 worlds are about to collide, Jeff.
Oh no.
At NXT TakeOver Toronto 2, Johnny Gargano versus the champion Adam Cole in a 3 Stages of Hell match.
Ugh.
Cole has picked a regular match. Johnny Gargano has picked a street fight. And if there's a third fall, that stipulation gets to be picked by the commissioner, William Regal. So what wins out for you here? Is it your dream pairing of Gargano and Cole, or is it your dreaded 3 Stages of Hell match?
I don't know for sure if that was necessarily my dream pairing. I do know that was my favorite match of the year.
Fantastic matches this year. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that they had some great matches, a couple of really good matches, and I think so far their last match was my favorite of the year. But as far as a dream matchup, I'd rather see Ciampa versus Gargano. I hate the 3 Stages of Hell match because they've already done the 2 out of 3 falls match thing. It's just, I guess I can see they kind of have to up the ante a little bit because it's a third match between these 2. But I don't know that I like it. I don't know that I want to see it.
Yeah?
I guess I just don't know.
Question, though. The question was, which wins out for you? Those 2 guys against each other, or you hating 3 Stages of Hell matches?
I think ultimately me hating 3 Stages of Hell will win out.
Are you still going to watch it?
I honestly don't know. I can't say that right now. My first instinct is no. I don't want to see that crap. But it'll depend on the lead up to it.
Yeah, because we follow NXT so frequently.
Right. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I guess it'll depend on my feelings at the time, but right now, no. I don't want to see that match.
Yeah, and I do, because I do like that style of match. I think that's a really cool concept that they haven't done in 10 years now.
Well, they haven't done it called that way, but it seems like every 2 out of 3 match ends up having a second fall that's just a street fight without actually calling it a street fight.
Okay, but I'm talking about an actual scheduled match where there's different stipulations in all 3 falls.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say more than that. At this point, I don't know. I hate the concept. I hate the fact that it turns into that. But at the same time, these are 2 ridiculously talented wrestlers. Johnny Gargano is probably one of the top 5 or 6 on the planet right now, and has been for a very long time.
Ugh, no, he's not.
I think he could be up there.
Well, he could be if all his matches didn't go the same way, if he had an actual finishing move, if so many things.
Yeah, he doesn't have an actual finisher. He has a submission move, but not a finisher.
And honestly, I mean, all of his matches end up devolving to the same thing. So
Fair enough.
that's how
true.
I feel about. I mean, I understand why people like him. He just does not fall into my wheelhouse.
He has gotten to a point where it's the underdog role way too much. Like, that seems to be an ever-present constant in all of his matches, where he's playing the gutsy underdog that's coming from behind.
Yeah,
But
and it's always a match full of finisher kickouts and Johnny being a superhero. So.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But
I realize that there's a lot of people that like that style. So I mean that's between him and them, but it's not something that I enjoy.
And see, he's one of the few people where I can actually get past the finisher kickouts, and I because of the way his character has been drawn and the way that he does his matches, I believe in his finisher kickouts more than I do anyone else's. I don't know why. Maybe it's a credit to him, but that's just the way it is. But no, I'm not looking forward to 3 stages of hell. I think that if it comes right down to it, I'm going to pick my hatred over 3 stages of hell more than my like for those 2 guys.
The other three members of Undisputed Era are also wrestling for championships on that show.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so Red Dragon is taking on the Street Profits for the tag titles, and Roderick Strong in a rematch against. Roderick Strong is taking on Velveteen Dream for the. What is it? The North American Championship?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So.
One bit of news. I don't know that you have heard about yet or not, but Pro Wrestling Noah has entered into a partnership with MLW Wrestling.
I did see that. I just wasn't sure how impactful that's going to be.
It's going to make for a bigger roster, but one of the things I've liked so much about MLW is, even though they have a fairly decent-sized roster, like this last week, we only saw 2 matches.
Yeah.
It was the debuting Wagner's against the LA Park. Yeah. And then Hammerstein against Davey Boy Smith. So, it had its moments, but if you're going to get that many people involved, all of a sudden you've got to start having a lot more 2 and 3 minute matches to fit into your hour programming or expand programming. Then you're starting to really dilute the product. Right now it's perfect because it's an hour long.
Yeah, I mean, they might also just scatter people out more like NXT did in the beginning too.
Yeah, true.
And let's see. I loved Cornette on commentary during that tag team main event.
Yeah, as always, Cornette had some really good one-liners during that.
My favorite was when he said, "Rich, I would have dived in front of you, but I just don't care about you very much." And there was fun with yeah, I know. Wait, thanks, Jim.
I'm starting to like those 2 together on commentary a lot more than I did 3 or 4 months ago.
Well, guess what? It's over now.
What?
Yeah, they had television tapings on July 25th, and Tony Schiavone was back for those.
Oh, man. I thought Shivani was done because of his football coming up
Yeah,
here.
that's what it was supposed to be, and then his schedule opened up a little bit.
So he came back for 1 week, 1 month of worth of tapings, and then he's gone again.
I really don't know. But they did announce that he would be back for these ones, and then they got pissed off at him for being on one of the Road to All Out shows.
Really?
Because apparently he didn't have permission to do that.
I thought it was funny listening to them during the main event, too, and hearing Rich Bokini say, I didn't sign up for this. And Cornette saying, I didn't sign up for any of this. They asked me to do it, so I said yes. I thought that was a pretty good line by him, too.
Yeah. And my boy Mance was fantastic in that episode, too.
He's always fantastic.
I know. I'm glad you finally got on board with him.
Yeah, I think his teaming with Sammy Callahan is what got him over for me. And once he got over, I just like everything about him.
Oh, one thing I do want to mention that Rich Bukini said during the match is that L.A. Park has the golden ticket and he can cash in anytime he wants, but when is he going to want to cash in? And I was like, dude, don't you watch your own programming? He does not have the golden ticket anymore.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that too. It's like he lost that last week. It's Mance has it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I caught that too. But I just kind of let them do their babble thing because that was a lot like the Tony Schiavone thing where he gave up that Simon Gotch turned on Lawler a week before it actually happened because the programming just didn't line up with the commentary.
Oh, I wasn't watching at that time, so I didn't see that. So I probably should go back and watch those at some point when I have, what's that stuff called? Oh yeah, time.
Time? Yeah, no. We never will.
Yeah. So I think that's all I had as far as, news and notes and wanted to get your opinions on a few things in the world of pro wrestling. And honestly, I wasn't a big fan of Mass Hysteria, so I didn't know if we really had many talking points on that one. But
there wasn't a lot to it. I mean, outside of nothing, really. There really wasn't. I mean, I thought Eli Isom put on a great show. I liked Kenny King and Dragon Lee. I thought that was a good match. Outside of that, I mean, I liked Dalton Castle's performance against Roosh. And I liked the edge Alex Shelley showed. But other than that, there really wasn't much to talk about.
Well, let's break down a little bit of what you just said. So as far as Eli Isom, I felt I was really hesitant about the way I felt about that particular match because Shane Taylor is supposed to be a beast. He has on his tights. What does it say? BAIF. Do you know what that stands for?
I do not.
Violence at its finest. And that's how he wrestles. But he gave so much to Isom in this one that it threatened to be a little bit ridiculous. I do believe that you get more out of beating an opponent if your opponent hits you with their best stuff. But I also think that with the size and experience that Taylor has over Isom, the fact that Isom, almost, pretty much dominated the last 5 minutes of that match was a bit of overkill to me. So I was starting to get into the realm of disbelief for me before Taylor came back and got the victory.
The only thing that I can really say was a negative for me in that match was the end when Isom kicked out and then pretty much hulked himself up just to get punched in the face and knocked out again. To me, that was like, why did you bother letting him kick out? You should have just ended it. Because all it did was make Shane Taylor look weaker than he should have.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, it didn't do any more for Isom than the couple of kickouts he did previous to that and the couple of no-sells he did of the punches and all that. I just felt like that kickout at the end was more damaging for Taylor than it was helpful for Isom.
Yes, I agree. And then you mentioned the Dragon Lee versus Kenny King match being pretty good. And I will say, I hate Dragon Lee. I really do. I am so fed up with his bullshit. I'm fed up with his, hey, hit me. And
Yeah,
then,
that does get.
and then getting the other guy to trade blows with him the same way. And then, I hate that fucking double stop on. He just does too many things in his matches that I can't stand for me to enjoy a Dragon Lee match. His stock with me has sunk so low in the last, I don't know, 3 months. It's ridiculous.
He does get. I don't like seeing him in his little heavyweight standoffs that he does. I will agree with that. I thought Kenny King's performance in this was top of the line, especially when he starts getting his timekeeper girlfriend involved. But the match itself was decent, but I can see where you're going with that. Is Dragon Lee, him and his trying to be a heavyweight is not as good as it should be.
Well, it's not even just him trying to be a heavyweight. It's him trying to do that, that fighting spirit style that I think is better suited to
Heavyweights.
To heavyweights, but it also pulls other wrestlers out of their games as well. It's not just him. He pulls his opponents out of their game because he has to get that stuff in, and it's ridiculous. Kenny King is way too smart to get into a situation like that, and he had to act like he was dumber than he actually is in this match.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I thought Alex Shelley looked good in his return. I like this darker side to him. We haven't seen that from him in a long time, and the way that he kind of stared down Taven at the end, I enjoyed that. I also liked the Dalton Castle match against Roosh. Didn't end the way that I wanted to, but I think that Castle really kind of got himself over as a super heel in that match, which is something that I like seeing out of him.
I agree. I really did like that match, and I liked that they teased it ending the same way the one at Madison Square Garden did, and then backed off of it.
Yeah, and then he rolled out and stood on the outside counting to 16 to make sure he lasted more than 16 seconds. I thought that was a unique, not necessarily unique, but I thought it was really well done by him and really laid a lot to his new character.
Yeah, because he came out there and he said, I guarantee this match will last longer than 15 seconds.
Right, exactly.
And that's the first thing he did in the match was guarantee it was going to last longer than that.
Yep. I'm not sure who those two guys at the beginning were.
I liked them both, though. I liked the ring skill of the one guy, and I liked the mic skills of the other guy and his manager. So
see, I didn't like the mic skills. I liked the manager. I didn't like the mic skills of the guy, but I liked the mic skills of the manager. I also liked the.
You're just mad that you didn't think of the name, the One Man Thrill Ride.
Yeah, fair enough. I also really liked whoever he was up against. Was it Casanova?
Something Casanova.
The guy with the dreads. I really liked him. I thought he has a lot of talent, a lot more than a lot of people do that are in major promotions now. I think it's only a matter of time before he hits a contract somewhere soon.
It's funny because he's a much better version of Swerve.
Yes, he is. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that guy, so I'm hoping that he gets. And I think I do want to say I saw him in another promotion at some point as well. So I'm hoping that he gets signed somewhere as well.
Yeah, he's really good.
And you mentioned Alex Shelley, and I agree about Shelley, but the crowd just did not seem to care about him.
No, they didn't. Well, they were all in on the Kingdom too. I mean, the hometown fans, they were all in on the Kingdom. It didn't matter who.
I agree with that. However, Jonathan Gresham got a nice pop. Jay Lethal got a nice pop. And here you got a guy that's returning for his first match in over a year, and you get very scattered applause for him.
I don't know that. I think part of it was the way that he went out. He wasn't really on the top of his game and fan support behind him when he broke up with Saban to retire. And then he spent weeks and weeks on the injured list just doing commentary before he just finally walked away a year ago.
Yeah, and now they threw him right into a world title match, which is really weird. I don't get it.
Right.
I mean, you would think they'd have to build him up more. Maybe they thought, like I do, that he'd get a better reaction as a returning star.
Possibly. I just think that if they were trying to get a better return or, better reaction for him, they maybe should have built up his return a little bit. They had to have known a few months ago that he was coming back. Why not some vignettes?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Why not something to hype his return? And it's sad because he really was flat when he was really flat to begin with. When he left, he was really flat. His speech to Chris Sabin about being allowing him to go off and be his own thing really kind of fell to the wayside. He didn't have the heat that he needed to when he left.
Well,
and then to be gone.
I don't know that he ever thought he was going to come back.
That's possible. That is possible.
For accounting and stuff, and that's what he was saying, and then it may just be like it may be something like what we talked about earlier with the drugs is he has that bug in him that he just can't put it aside.
That's possible.
Look at me and you. We can't just stop watching wrestling.
That's a good point. We hate one, we move to another. It's like, we get our fix a different way. We all of a sudden hate WWE, so we go to Ring of Honor and New Japan, and then we move on to MLW and TNA or Impact and so many others. So AEW, yeah.
But I was really impressed with the Kingdom in that match. I thought the Kingdom.
I did too.
I think especially Vinny. I think especially Vinny has improved so much in the last couple of months. It's ridiculous.
Well, not even
him.
And
then Orion has improved as well. He I just think that Vinny is so far. I think Vinny is like right now. Taven does a lot of great stuff, but I think as an overall package, Vinny might be the best member of the stable right now.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I do think he's getting closer and closer to Taven's level. I think that both TK and Vinny have really come into their own, where I could easily see them as singles champions. I think they've got enough character development on their own that they could break away from the Kingdom and be viable as champions on their own.
Yeah, or at least major contenders.
And that's what I like about it. Very rarely do you ever see a stable that has everyone in the stable that could be a viable contender.
Well, hasn't that kind of been the pattern with the Kingdom, though? It's been kind of in a way like the Bizarro lifeblood, where they may not be honorable, but they're certainly all encouraging each other and building each other up, and they're mentoring each other, and getting better together and as a unit.
Well, and I love the way that they played off to keep Taven safe too, where even when Lethal comes in and he demands to get a piece of Taven, and Vinny fakes out that he's going to tag Taven and then tags in TK. I thought they are meshing so well together, and they're doing such a great job with, like you said, building each other up, that I just think the longer the Kingdom stays together, the better off these three are all going to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
and I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, let's say at Final Battle, we're talking about it being the Briscoes against Vinny and TK for the tag straps.
To be honest, I wouldn't put it past maybe this year, maybe not this year, but maybe next year. Remember how excited we all got about a Shield triple threat? I think we could be seeing that developing with the Kingdom as well.
Interesting.
Where the three of them are so viable as top champions that a triple threat between the three of them is what the end game is. I don't think it's this year. I think they still need a little more building up to get to that level, but I could truly see them like the Shield was in 2015, where that triple threat match was what everybody had wanted forever.
Of course, that's also assuming that all three guys stay with the promotion long enough.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. But I could definitely see them getting, because I every time I see them, they get better. I think TK, and you mentioned Vinny. Vinny is such a polarizing character that everything that he does, I've got my eyes glued to him. But TK has been that, he's been that guy that's developed without a real persona. Like Matt Taven has always had his CMLL stuff to fall back on, and he's had his history to fall back on, and his skills on the mic, where TK has just been that nose to the grindstone wrestler since the day he's come in, and he's been able to build on that to make himself his own character.
Yeah, you talk about people. Well, you don't talk about, but the announcers will sometimes talk about people rebuilding themselves from the ground up. And I remember,
TK is one of those guys.
Exactly, and I was going to say, because I remember, when TK first came in, I was really excited about him. He was really exciting. He was flying all over the place. He was awesome. And then he came back from injury, and I think he's just been kind of rebuilding himself as a pro wrestler and his style ever since then. And now we're starting to see the fruits of those labors.
Yeah, I mean, that injury that he had, and was it last week we were talking about how it seemed like, when we did the Evolve show, it seemed like that Tozawa.
Yeah.
Is that who it was when he got himself caught in the ring or in the guardrail? Yeah, in the guardrail, that he was going to have a TK moment. But I think that TK injury, when he flipped out and broke his leg, I think that might have changed his entire outlook, and it's made him a better wrestler because of it. It's made him a better performer, because now he's not out there just trying to do the crazy flips. He's making his persona and his skill the forefront.
Yeah, and he's trying to get himself over with a couple of different nicknames, like the best around, which I don't know you're ever going to get over very well by using the theme song from the Karate Kid. But the new one he's doing, I think, is intriguing. I just don't understand the point of it. So if he's able to flesh that out, I think it could work really well. I mean, the new one is El Americano, which just is the American. So, I don't understand, where he's going with that. But if he's got an idea behind it, he can flesh it out. I could see it working.
Well, that's more of a play on his match with Roosh, where Roosh was El Toro Blanco, he's El Americano. And I mean, they did a great job. And I love Ian Riccaboni. He is probably, outside of Kevin Kelly, those are probably my two favorite announcers, and it depends on the week and what I'm watching, which one I like best, to be honest. But he has, it's something that Ian really pushed in this last couple matches, about how TK Orion found the key to defeating Roosh. And he really built up the fact that TK Orion could be that guy that finally beats Roosh and gives him his first loss.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Well, I guess I don't either, but it just, the seeds are set with the way that Riccaboni really built him up this past weekend.
Do you remember that Roosh's actually very first opponent in Ring of Honor was also TK Orion?
Yep.
Okay.
I just miss him in MLW, to be honest. I thought both he and Dragon Lee were going to have good runs in MLW, and then just all of a sudden they got signed by Ring of Honor.
Yeah, gotta go where the money is, bro.
Yeah, fair enough.
Speaking of announcers, I was listening to Grilling JR the other day, and I meant to, and this is another thing I meant to mention earlier, and I just, one of my news things of the week that just kind of slipped my mind. But since you mentioned announcers, I'm going to bring it up here. He said that people should relax about announcing that, that they're doing the best they can, and that he got people tweeting in things like, I wish you'd have a stroke so you'd have to retire, which is over the line. But I also want to say that he does not always do the best that he can. That's a outright fucking lie. Maybe he is with AEW, but I think all the criticism that we gave him for his announcing in JPW was absolutely dead on the money, right on. You know,
Yeah.
he was there for a paycheck. He didn't care about learning about the wrestlers. He didn't care about learning about the promotion. He insulted the promotion any chance that he got when he was on commentary.
Yep.
And so no, I don't. And you know, how is a fan supposed to be excited about a promotion when the announcer is downplaying them?
Well,
And so to me, yeah, if somebody said that to him, that person is a dick. But at the same time, JR was also being a dick pretty much the entire time he was employed by Access TV as an announcer.
yeah, I mean, I'll give. It's hard to say because when we used to listen to him on Access TV, it really sounded like time had passed him by. Like he just didn't give a shit. He was just there for the paycheck, like you said. And then now he's been much, much better on AEW. Maybe he just was out of his element. Maybe he just didn't understand the style and didn't care to. I guess I don't know. Maybe his wife dying and you know, I hate to say that, but because I feel bad for him. You never want to lose your spouse like that. But maybe his wife dying woke him up a little bit, where he realized that, you know, he maybe got his passion back. He realized he had nothing left, so he got his passion back. It just, when he was with NJPW and doing Access TV, he just did not feel like he gave a shit about the business anymore.
Yeah, or at least he didn't care about NJPW or their wrestlers, you know.
Possibly, but I don't think, because he was doing something else during that time. Well, you would hear him when he'd come back and do Raw specials every now and then. He just didn't seem like the same guy anymore. He didn't seem like he cared about it. He seemed like, I mean, you and I both heard those episodes on 83 Weeks where Bischoff would talk about how he just had a bad attitude. And that's almost the way that it seemed, is he just had a bad attitude, like he didn't want to do it. And now the last few pay-per-views I've heard him, in fact, all three actually, he seems like he has his passion back for the business. He seems like he's more about putting over the wrestlers than he is about himself again, like he was in the late 90s.
Yeah, and actually he said something else that I found very insightful about announcing, which is that the way that WWE does it, as we all know, is wrong. But what he brought up, which was that you're taking away from the believability of a wrestling match when you're talking about other matches during the match that you're watching, or you're trying to shill other things that are going on, because that means that you know that the finish is not coming up anytime soon. Whereas if you're actually involved in watching a match that is not predetermined, then you don't know what's going on, and so you're going to want to call the matches. So I'm hopeful with him saying that. That means that we're not going to hear the same kind of shit on AEW, that live TV that we do on like SmackDown or Raw, where where you know they're going to talk about, oh, coming up we have this main event. You know, they're going to actually be calling the matches, and then maybe like talking about what's coming up after those matches or before those matches.
Yeah. You know, and that's one of those things that we've always hated about, especially when we go back and watch the Attitude Era. Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross were so into talking about what was coming up that they didn't pay what was right in front of them the due respect.
Yep.
And I have enjoyed that about AEW so far. I always enjoy that about Kevin Kelly and Ian Riccaboni. And to be honest, Schiavone and his run in MLW did a great job of it, where they paid attention to what was happening in the ring right now.
Right.
And I think that maybe it was the way that the 90s were set up, that it didn't put itself to that type of wrestling, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it was Vince in their ear, but it could have also been Bischoff in their ear. It's hard to say. I've never been a fan of that when they wouldn't pay attention to what's actually happening in the ring. So
Yeah, because if
hopefully
they're not paying attention to it, what are they telling you, Jeff?
that we don't need to either.
Yeah, that is right. That is not important.
And that's the worst way to build new stars.
Right.
You know?
I mean, the guy we talked about earlier, the guy we talked about earlier, like, Ultimo Dragon and Super Crazy was in the same match with Ultimo Dragon, but when those guys were wrestling on WCW, it was almost always in the opening matches on the show, and they almost always got talked over about what the NWO was doing.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So, all right. So, anything else about Mass Hysteria?
Not really. Did you want to talk about that G1 at all?
All right. So, you were saying how much you were enjoying. You said, "Damn it, G1 is just too good this year." And here's my thing with it: is the G1 might be really good this year, but my damn it part of it is that I don't care. I was going to try to watch a couple of G1 matches today, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
See, and I got
it depresses me. But I'm just, when I see guys that I like that are 0-3, 1-4, or 0-3 or 1-3, and everybody that I don't necessarily care much for is winning all their matches, and I just they've already backtracked this year with their they did what I consider a full reset this year. It makes me like not interested in what they're doing.
See, and I have been the exact opposite. Like I'm finding it hard to not watch any of the matches. Yeah, like you try to ignore the Tai Chi matches and the Toru Yano matches and people like that, but even the matches they've had have been very entertaining to the point where I can't stop watching them. It's every match so far, and I'm irritated at the way the blocks are shaking out and the fact that Okada has 10 points, because I really don't want to see him win the block, especially when you've got a block that has ZSJ, Sonata, Evil, and Ospreay, and the showing that Archer has had so far this year. Kota Ibushi's in that block, Kenta's in that block. So for Okada to win, so for Okada to win that block that's that stacked irritates me. I really do like the fact that Kenta has 8 points. Evil has really kind of turned around after his dismantling by Fale. I'm really surprised that Ospreay and Sonata and ZSJ are as low as they are. I mean, Sonata and ZSJ to only have 1 win, Ospreay to only have 2 at this point in the tournament really surprises me. Archer he's only got 2 wins out of 5, but he has still been a beast in every single one of his matches, which is kind of refreshing to see. I want to see where they're pushing him. On the other side, Moxley with 10 points. I didn't think they would pull the trigger on Moxley like that, but he does put on good matches now that when he's not in his street fight mode. But everybody else outside of Moxley, it's like Moxley is running away with that B block. There's not anybody even close. Ishii and Robinson have 6 points. They're 2 matches behind him. That's 4 points behind him. Takagi, Taichi, Naito, Cobb.
And Ishii's lost to him, so it's actually more like 6 points behind him.
Yeah, and then has he faced Robinson yet?
No, he faces Robinson on the last day, I believe, of B block.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, Ishii is like 6 points behind Moxley right now. Robinson is 4 points behind him. And then you've got Jay White with only 4 points, who I thought was my odds-on favorite. He was the guy that I was putting all my money on to win the whole thing. And for him to only have 4 points, 2 wins out of 5, that's just shocking to me. So it's been...
And that's the difference. Is it shocking you, and it's pissing me off? Because all the guys that I'm cheering for, other than Moxley and Kenta, are all sitting at 4 points or less.
1 win, 2 wins, yeah.
And that just And honestly, for Evil to beat Sonata made me want to kill somebody. Because Sonata was, because it seemed coming into this year that Sonata was the guy, was the member of those guys that they were pushing, and then they just totally turned it around, and it's so fucking irritating to me.
It's to see the match that he put on against ZSJ Sonata I'm talking about, and come away with the win. I really did think that he was going to be where Okada is now at 10 points. Just that very well could go down as my match of the year. It's like right now neck and neck between that one and Gargano Cole. I honestly think that Sonata ZSJ match has even gone past Cody Dustin for me. But to see them both at only 2 points apiece at this juncture it really makes me wonder what the hell's going on. They really pushed Ospreay and Takagi and Shingo going into this G1, and they're both sitting at 4 points.
Yeah.
So
And as far as getting back to Sonata just for a second, this is about to be the 5th straight year with him getting 8 points or less, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Why is this young guy never elevating past this middle of the road record?
Well, they push him to the moon when it's the New Japan Cup, and then when it comes to the G1, he's a forgotten entity. ZSJ, I think, might be the most... Well, ZSJ and Jay White, those two might be the most surprising, being at the bottom of their respective blocks, because ZSJ has been on a tear for like 3 years now. To the point where he won the New Japan Cup not that long. 2 years ago? Last year?
Last year.
And to have him...
And he tied for the top of his block at the G1 last year.
And to have him right now with only 2 points, his only win was against Fale. He lost to Evil, he lost to Okada, he lost to Sonata and Tanahashi. He lost to the 4 top guys in this bracket.
No, he lost to Sonata.
Didn't I say that?
Yeah, but how was he one of the...
Ospreay, Sonata, Tanahashi.
But how was Sonata one of the top guys in the bracket is what I was saying.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, and I guess Ospreay's really not in the upper echelon either, but when you look at it on paper, those are probably the 4 top guys in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it's just depressing as a fan when 3 guys that I think are two of the 3 who I think are in the running for the top wrestler in the world, and the other guy is just one of my favorites right now, and they have a total of 6 points or 8 points between them.
Sonata, ZSJ, and Ospreay. Yeah, they have 8 points between the 3 of them.
Between them out of 15 matches.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it is sad. I mean, when you look at Ospreay, and he's easily hands down my wrestler of the year so far this year, for him to only have 4 points is shocking. Jay White, who I thought was going to win the whole thing, to only have 4 points is shocking. ZSJ, after the tear he's been on, same thing with Sonata, after the tear they've been on for the last couple of years, to only have 2 points to me is shocking. And then they're building up this story with Evil, but he's only got 6 points.
But that means he still has a winning record as opposed to the other guys, though.
Well, yeah, I guess 3-2, but and then you look at the other side, Takagi with only 4 points, Cobb with only 4 points, White with only 4. They're tied with Toru Yano and Taichi. When would those 3 ever be tied with Toru Yano and Taichi?
Yep, and we're halfway through the tournament.
Right, exactly. When you watch the matches, now I agree, when you look at those standings, it's like, well, what the hell are they doing? But I have yet to watch a bad match. I've watched the first 2 rounds of both blocks, and every match on all 5 matches on all 4 nights, and every one of those matches has been stellar. Even when my favorites are losing, they've still put on amazing matches.
Yeah, and that's the conundrum with NJPW is night after night they're going to put together great professional wrestling matches for you. But the question is whether they tell the best stories. And right now, I would argue that they're not doing that. I mean, if this comes, because again, I think they pushed the reset button this year, both at Supercard and at Dominion, and then they had, this tournament shaping up the way that it is. I mean, unless something major comes out of this, like Sonata ends up with only 2 or 4 points and he just goes crazy and leaves LIJ and becomes a huge superstar on the rise, then to me it's just bullshit.
I think the only negative that I've had about this tournament, aside from our favorites losing every time, but this evil storyline, where is it going? It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is an organization that's always rewarded long-term paying attention, but that's what's hurting me right now. I think is that I'm paying attention to what's going on with Sonata, and it's never anything that gets over a plateau before it goes sinking right back to the bottom.
The other thing that I've had kind of an issue with is this year. I've never had this issue before because IWGP Heavyweight title or World title, whatever they're calling it now, has always been the most prestigious world championship out there.
Yep.
Ahead of, a lot of people argue, well, the WWE championship, but I don't think that because over the last 15, 20 years, anybody can walk in, cut a promo on the champ, and get a title shot. NJPW, you have to earn your title shot, and this G1 is one of the most grueling tournaments in the history of wrestling.
Yep.
When you consider they're wrestling 10 times against top talent in less than a month, that's just amazing.
Plus Taichi, Fale, and Yano.
Toru Yano, yeah. Well, yeah. But regardless, and you could throw Goto in there too. But they're just, it's easily the most grueling tournament. And then when you look at the New Japan Cup, which is another just grueling tournament, they don't hand out number one contenderships to anybody that can cut a promo on the mic. These guys have to go out and earn their title chances. So it makes it the most prestigious championship on the planet. And one thing that's really gotten under my skin this year is that we've had 2 transitional champions this year. We had Tanahashi, who won it just to give it to Jay White, who won it just to give it back to Okada because Kenny Omega left.
Yeah.
And that's not anything that I've ever expected out of the IWGP title. So that's got me kind of in the reset mode like you've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it feels like it feels, and I know it's for a different reason, but it feels to me like what TNA kept doing, like when they got TV deals.
Right, they'd always take it off AJ and give it to Jeff Jarrett.
Right, and they'd move AJ back to the X division, and they put the tag titles back on
America's Most Wanted.
America's Most Wanted, yeah.
And then they'd have a war with Triple X, and AJ would be back fighting all the X Division guys, showing off how great he is in the ring with his high flying and everything, and Jeff Jarrett would be at the top of the mountain. You're right. It does kind of feel that way.
Chris Harris was in the middle of a feud for the World Championship. Let's just reset that and make him back into a tag team wrestler.
Yeah, put him back with Chris Harris. Or no, actually it was, you got to give him credit, though. His run with Beer Money was great.
I was talking about Chris Harris, though, not James Storm.
Oh, no. Well, James Storm was the guy that really got the shaft, because after he broke up with AMW, he went on his singles tear.
No,
and
that was Chris Harris. You're misremembering.
No, Chris Harris went to NXT and then got fat. Or no, ECW and got fat. But I think that
he lost interest in being a pro wrestler, and that happened with him because the rug got pulled out from under him when he was on a world title push.
Oh, see now, and I'm jumping ahead. You're talking about when they first came from the asylum and went to TNT.
I am, yes.
Yeah, I'm talking about once Bischoff and Hogan took over.
Ah, okay.
Because at that point James Storm was on the verge of running through and making a run at the title, and then Bischoff and Hogan take over, and all of a sudden he's in Beer Money with Robert Roode.
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Which I'm not going to say that was a bad choice, because I love those two together. I loved Fortune. I thought the faction Fortune was amazing. One of the better factions in the last probably 30 years. But I see where you're going with that, where they really hit the reset button. And I'll give WWE credit. There has been times when the ratings have suffered and the belt goes back on Hogan, or the belt goes back on Shawn Michaels, or the belt goes back on Brock Lesnar, or John Cena. But for the most part, they don't do a complete company-wide reset like Impact did, and like NJPW seems to be doing.
Right. And I just have no interest in watching the same story play out again, or them. I mean, I really dislike what they've done this year, and I know that I'm probably in the minority, because I'm sure there's a lot of diehard NJPW fans that are thrilled with having Okada as that dominant world champion again.
No, I don't.
But to me, it was too soon for him to get that belt back, and he didn't have enough of a struggle with to get back to that point.
I'm right there with you. I think Jay White deserved to hold that title at least until Wrestle Kingdom. I think he's the guy that really deserved a long run with that title. I love the fact that
he deserved to have one fucking successful title defense.
At the very least, he deserved that. But it's hard for me to not watch this regardless of the storylines, because every match is great. They just know how to put on great standalone matches.
And I think that with the other stuff we've been watching, like MLW and AEW and Impact, that I'm more to the point now, and like what ECW we've been watching, and us talking about going back to being a fan. I think I'm more to the point where I'd rather watch a great story play out on television than watch a great match that may not end up meaning anything.
I think with the way that I am right now, where there's so much wrestling and so much going on, and the fact that I'm following like 12 different promotions at the time, plus trying to write my book, plus trying to do the stuff we do for Patreon, not just the wrestling stuff, but the non-wrestling stuff on top of it. I'm okay with just great matches, because I can really just jump in and watch a great match here and there. And that's why this G1 is really starting to frustrate me, because here I am trying to pick and choose matches to watch, and I've watched 20 matches of the G1 already. I'm only through the first four nights.
Yeah.
I'm still 3 nights behind. And it's just, I look at the matchups and I'm like, I gotta watch this. I have to watch this one. I have to watch this one. It's just because the matches are so good, but maybe I'm becoming less about storylines and more about match quality with my limited time and being able to watch it. I guess I don't know. I still do appreciate good storylines. Like the Jay White Okada thing at the end of last year was phenomenal. One of the best stories I've seen in decades. And I would put it right up there with Ciampa Gargano as probably the 2 best storylines I've seen since the early 2000s. And we're not so I still do appreciate a good storyline, but maybe with my limited time, I'm more into the actual match quality than the storylines.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And and last year I watched every single night of the G1. This year I am so far behind I doubt I'll ever catch up.
There's no way this is turning, because.
But I'll still watch the last 3 nights for sure.
Well, this is, like I said, I'm 3 nights behind because I've had to watch every match. I look at who's facing who, and I'm just like, okay, I got to watch that one. And I haven't even seen Moxley really on this tear that he's been on. He won his first 2 matches, but I haven't seen him go on the tear that he's been on, really. You know,
Yeah,
I want to see him against Ishii. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, and,
I
you know,
want to see him against Takagi. Sorry.
I don't. So, no, that's fine. I mean, I just wanted to say, I hope I'm not bringing anybody down that is enjoying the G1 this year. That's awesome if you are. I just don't feel like what NJPW has done since New Japan Cup has been for me.
Well, I like the New Japan Cup. I think it kind of made a turn at the G1.
Right, I said since the New Japan Cup.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think it really made its turn at the G1 because I think the G1 is where they, like you said, they really pushed the reset button, having White lose the title to Okada.
Yeah, and the G1 is, you know, and the funny thing is that G1 Supercard is still my favorite show of the year, but just everything that's happened, you know, starting there and has been kind of downhill.
Well, I remember saying it then, and I'm going to say it again now. It's, to me, the G1 was really two different cards. You had Ring of Honor, who made all the right calls. They put the belts on the right people. They took the belts off of Lethal, put it on Taven. They put on a great show and made great decisions. I really, as much as we hated God and as much as you hate God, I still like them. I still like their style, but I can see why you don't. But I think taking the belts off Briscoes, especially with what we got at Manhattan Mayhem, was the right move. Just because I think that, so I still stand by Ring of Honor made the right decisions. New Japan made the wrong decisions during that G1.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And I think at that time I was so much into the match quality that I was able to push that aside. But now, not so much.
No, it's funny, now you flip to the storyline guy and I flip to the match quality guy. Where a year ago the roles were reversed. I was more about the storyline and leading up to it, and you're like, just watch the previews before the main event.
Yes. All right, so but then then All In happened, and Major League Wrestling happened, and Impact got so much.
God, Major League Wrestling is so good.
It is. And,
it is just so good.
And I think AEW has been fantastic so far too.
I've really liked their pay-per-views, and it annoys me listening to people. And I'm not trying to call anybody out, and the people that I'm going to say this about, I'm not going to mention names, but you're going to know who you are, and just believe me, I'm not calling you out. I'm not saying that your thinking is wrong or by any means, but we talked about this with CM Punk. And again, with, we've talked about it before with Sasha and so many other wrestlers. I want to see the AEW roster breathe as it is and grow from what it is now to build up these stars, to build up people like Darby Allin, to build up, some of these women wrestlers that we don't know too much about and get them over to the point where they should be. Like MJF. He has the potential to be one of the greatest heels of all time, right up there with Ted DiBiase. But he's only 22. He is nowhere near the main event level guy that he should be or that he's going to be. He's a mid-carder. He's an upper mid-carder right now. And I read things with people talking about these guys and saying, well, MJF, he's a mega superstar and he's the best talker they have. Yeah, he probably is. But he's not the guy that's going to sell tickets, because as great as he is on the mic, he's average in the ring. He's still too green to go in there and put on an instant classic like Cody or Kenny does. Or Moxley or Jericho. He's just not on that level in the ring. Yeah, he can go toe-to-toe talking with them, but it reminds me a lot of Chris Jericho in the late 90s, from 98, 99, when he was talking a big game and he would stand toe to toe on the mic with The Rock and he was calling out Goldberg, but he was not on that main event level yet. It wasn't until probably the mid 2000s, like 2003, 2004, when he finally ascended to that level where he could be considered one of the greatest of all times. And I think MJF is still on that same level that Jericho was back then. I think in 4 or 5 years, MJF is going to be probably the top star in the industry. He's just not there yet.
Jericho is a fantastic example because I think you and I have talked about this before, but when he was the undisputed champion, he always had that deer in the headlights look.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
am I doing this right? All this kind of stuff. And that's simply because he was not ready for that. And you don't want to put, with a roster of guys that All Elite has, to put MJF in that spot until he's absolutely ready for it would be a tragic mistake.
And honestly, I think they're making that mistake with Page right now by pushing him to that, because I still don't look at Page as that standard bearer. I still look at him as an upper mid-carder who puts on great matches, who has all the talent in the world, who's great on the mic, who's got great charisma, can put on astonishing matches like Jericho, like MJF. They're just not seasoned to that point where they can carry the load. And Jericho, like you said, is a perfect example. When he beat The Rock in Austin the same night and then went out and jobbed Triple H 3 months later, he was a perfect example, because every time he walked out, he was unsure of what he was doing. You could see it in his demeanor and the way he talked. It even took down his mic skills a little bit because he was so overwhelmed by being the top dog.
Yeah.
And I think people like MJF, I think people like Darby Allin, I think people like Adam Page can get there. I just think that because they're incredibly talented, both in the ring, on the mic, but they're still, like, MJF is still really green in the ring. He doesn't have as smooth a transitions as a guy like that you would want as your top belt holder does. And he doesn't, he just doesn't have, I don't know how to call it, but it's like, the best comparison I can make is to Jericho, where Jericho was that great talker, probably the best talker in the business, would go toe-to-toe with anybody, including The Rock, which at the time he was the man. Now you look back and he's like, oh, just a bunch of silly catchphrases, but Jericho could go toe-to-toe with him. But he just was not ready. He just was not ready. He needed that seasoning. He needed that time to develop into the face of a company, where I think MJF, if you give him another 2 or 3 years, he could easily go down as one of the greatest of all time. He just needs that seasoning.
Yeah. Yeah, and luckily for AEW, they've got plenty of guys. Well, not plenty, but they've got guys there that have that experience. They've got Jericho, they've got Moxley, they've got Cody. Guys that have been world champions for national promotions already.
Well, if you take their top...
And Kenny Omega, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, if you take their top 4 guys and you just trade the belt between those 4 guys for the next 3 years and build up people like Page, build up people like MJF, build up Darby Allin and Jimmy Havoc, who, by the way, Jimmy Havoc has really impressed me over the last couple of pay-per-views, because he's actually shown me that the dude knows how to wrestle. Granted, I think Darby Allin has a better skill set than Jimmy Havoc, but Jimmy Havoc has really impressed me, much like Moxley has, in the fact that he's actually gone out there and been a wrestler, not a fighter. I just think that they've got all the tools in place. They've got 4 guys at the top to feud over the title. They've got enough guys so when, like say Moxley and Jericho are in a world title picture, Omega and Cody can build up the upper mid-carders like MJF and Shawn Spears and, some of these other guys, Adam Page, to get them to that next level. So in 3 or 4 years, you're going to have 6 or 7 or 8 people that are viable champions, viable leaders of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got about 20 minutes to go.
And we have Jesus.
Not talked about Mayhem yet. So.
This is what happens with us every time.
Yeah. So
really out of this, if I had to kind of pick and choose the way things were going, I loved the triple threat for the three-way match for the world title, but I hate the fact that every fucking time somebody has a in-hand title opportunity, they give it up for a three-way. Kenny King did it. Marty Scurll did it.
Oh, no, he did not.
Yeah, he did.
He did not give up his title shot. He challenged Taven, and Taven accepted.
So that was but he used his title shot to challenge. Didn't he?
He never said he was cashing in his title shot.
So unlike Marty Scurll, he still has a title shot.
Yep.
Oh, good. Well, that makes me happy. But that match I thought was great. I loved Kenny King's addition to that because I was not looking forward to Taven versus Lethal again.
Well, here's the thing. Kenny King coming out there and being his arrogant self and making that challenge fit the King, King, perfectly, right? Taven's accepting of that challenge and his arrogance fit that character perfectly, right?
Right. Exactly.
Did Jay Lethal, the babyface, getting pissed off about it being a triple threat and backing down a bit from a challenge because of that fit his character?
Not even in the slightest. And I'm so glad you saw that too, because that was one thing I really wanted to talk about. The way he lost his mind and ran down there was not the franchise that they tried to portray him as.
Not at all. That was bizarre. And then, Riccaboni's trying to cover for it, Lethal's not going to stand for this. Lethal, this is not how Lethal does things. He prepares for his opponents and all this jazz. And it's like, no, if he was still the champion, he'd be doing exactly the same thing that fucking Taven just did. So I did not understand that whatsoever.
Speaking of Riccaboni, and I hate to drop back to this, but it was something that really caught me and I thought was great by the two. You and I have talked about this before. Ian Riccaboni is probably either him or Kevin Kelly. Matt Stryker when he was doing play-by-play, but he's not anymore. So Riccaboni and Kevin Kelly are on any given day my 1 and 2. The team of Callis and Kelly and Riccaboni and Cabano, I think are two of the best teams that tandems I've ever heard. And I loved the fact when Colt called him out during Mass Hysteria, when he was going off on GOD and how rude this is of them and how they're not taking this seriously and how they're, and Colt Cabana just looks at him and says, "What the hell are you talking about? 6 months ago you were talking about the Briscoes as being just horrible people, and now you're calling them the flag bearers." I thought that was brilliant and a great way for those two to kind of gel a little bit more.
Yeah, and then you have Chris Coleman kind of trying to play peacemaker and going to play the man.
Right. Yeah, those three really.
I thought that 3-man booth both shows was fantastic.
Yeah, I did too. I think the three of them work really well together. I haven't seen a 3-man booth that I've liked ever. Because usually when you add somebody, it takes away from somebody else. But these three have such distinct personalities that they work so great together.
What works so well for me is that it always feels like Coleman and Cabana are in competition with each other.
Uh-huh.
They're always trying to one-up each other. It's almost like, Coleman's trying to take that job, and he thinks if he gets like one over on Cabana, he's going to get that full-time position or something.
I still think one of my favorite moments, Cole Cabana moments, and I know I'm sidetracking here, but Juice Robinson was in the booth doing commentary when they were trying to get the whole Lifeblood thing up and going, and Juice called Colt dude, and Colt just stops midstream, mid-sentence, and goes, "My name's not dude, my name is Mr. Cabana." and then Juice immediately pipes back, "Oh yes, Mr. Cabana." I just that's the kind of thing out of Colt that I really, really like. And it's funny because 3 years ago I hated the guy, hated his commentary, thought he was one of the worst ever. And once Riccaboni joined that, and as much as I hated seeing Kevin Kelly go, I think the Colt Cabana Ian Riccaboni combination is just, those two gel so well together, and they're so, it reminds me a lot of Jesse Ventura and Gorilla Monsoon, where they just got along so great together, and they played off each other so well that they're easily one of the best in business right now.
The only criticism that I really have of Colt Cabana, and it's something that and it's something that kind of bothers me, has kind of been nagging at me, is that I don't know if he's like a born again Christian or something like that, but some of the stuff he says on commentary, it kind of is starting to feel that way, because like when he calls Taven's setup move for the climax, he says just the tip of that knee, which is not the name of the move. The name of the move is just the tip.
I've noticed that too.
And the other one is Juice Robinson's setup for his finisher is called the left hand of God. And Cabana always calls it the left hand from God.
Right.
You know, which would make more sense to me. I mean, it definitely could be an error. It could just be something where he's, you know, kind of mental block and he just keeps calling it that, or maybe Robinson's never you know, commented on it. But it also could be that, you know, he's using his Christian stuff. If that's the case, to, you know, just kind of say, you know, that's a God-given left hand.
Right. You know, and I'm okay with it. You know, it's more power to him. You know, we give Stryker a lot of credit for no longer calling it a suicide dive. You know, and you hear other people that have kind of changed from it, going more to the Mexican style, calling it tope suicido instead of a suicide dive. But, you know, you've got to.
So it's okay if it's Spanish for suicide dive?
No, but you've heard there's been other people that, like Kevin Kelly's one of those guys that used to call it a suicide dive, and after Stryker came out, he all of a sudden is like, oh, it's a tope suicido.
I know, but I'm just saying it's the same thing in Spanish.
Well, I know, I get that, I do get that, but I basically what I'm trying to get to is the fact that you had Stryker who was so dead set in his beliefs that he said, no, I will not do that anymore. It's now this. To me, that is, I absolutely love that. And if Colt is doing that now too, with, you know, his newfound religion or whatever, and he's changing things up to fit his beliefs, I give him all the credit in the world. And I hope he does change the world. I wish he would come out like Matt Stryker did and flat out announce it. This is what I'm doing. But at the same point, I give him all the credit in the world.
And I wish he would just call the moves the way that they are, or leave it to Riccaboni to call them.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, leave it to Riccaboni. Let him do it.
I mean, if he doesn't feel comfortable saying it, that's cool. But then just have, you know, the other guy call it, because he's not supposed to be the play guy anyway. He's supposed to be the color guy.
And yeah, I agree. I'm not even going to try and talk about that. I agree.
Let's see. I've got to pull my notes back up for this card here. So
let's see what else was on here. Roosh TKO Ryan was a great match. Great match. I really like the mercenary Flip Gordon persona that he has, where he's not talking. He kind of goes about his business, not really getting too involved, and then all of a sudden is the focal point of the match. He did it in Mass Hysteria. He did it again in this 8-man match, where it all boiled down to what Flip Gordon did that ended up costing them the match. And the fact that Flip kind of ran off after Tracy Williams chased him. Was it Tracy or was it Mark Haskins that chased him?
I think it was Haskins.
But I think that Flip Gordon, is, you know, and Marty Scurll is obviously the leader. He's obviously the fan favorite, but I'm really enjoying this heel turn out of Flip Gordon. Yeah. Even though he hasn't spoken, he hasn't gone in and done a one-on-one match, because this is a guy who's been a face for so long. Maybe he doesn't really know how to be a heel. And I love the fact that he's not talking to anybody, and he's really, really limited in his matches and his involvement. It's just showing he's getting involved just long enough to show that heel persona, and then be showing that he's this cowardly heel running away and so on. I love what he is doing with that character.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I think that he's probably kind of the heir apparent to that stable if Marty does end up leaving for AEW. And I think that it kind of gives him time to grow into that heel role, and it really is a big turnaround for him because I mean he was basically he was like an American hero, and the crowd was always behind him, and
Yeah, a soldier of fortune and all that stuff. He's a
not a soldier of fortune.
What the hell? What was he? He was. Was he Army or was he Marine?
He was Army Ranger.
Okay. Yeah, and so he had his whole gimmick all built in, and to be able to turn it the way that he did, it's a weird thing too, because when you think about it, is Villain Enterprise a heel or a face group? Marty and PCO. Well, Marty and PCO get face pops every time they come out, regardless of who they're facing.
Yeah, that's true.
And then Brody King he's such a funny guy that they don't really give credit to. They don't really let him on the mic that much, but the stuff that he did with Marty Scurll when they were in the Super Juniors, and they were looking for the fourth member of Villain Enterprises, some of those vignettes they had on Twitter were just fantastic. And Brody King probably made those, where his involvement and all that was just kind of put that over the top. And he's so talented as a big man that it's just the three of them together were faces. They got all the popular heat. They were cheered all the time. So it's kind of weird to me that Flip Gordon turned heel and joined a face stable, but is still a heel.
Did he turn heel or did he turn villain?
He turned villain, I guess, when he turned on Lifeblood. Because let's face it, Lifeblood doesn't have the kind of heat that they would have had Juice and Finlay stuck around.
I agree. Yeah. That was one thing about the show is the match order was really weird. I get the tag team title match being the main event. I don't get having the 8-man tag between that and the world championship. Maybe it's just better for cutting for television or something. But it was really a weird setup for me.
Well, this wasn't really television. This was a live show, a live event.
It was a TV taping that was broadcast live for Honor Club members.
Is that what it was? Because I thought they were talking about, because Kenny King in his promo against Matt Taven was talking about it being live, and I heard Rick Abani say a few times that this is live exclusively for Honor Club. And
it was, but it's also on tape for television later on.
Okay, yeah, and maybe that's the case.
This is the first time they've ever done that.
I my feelings. I always think the world title should be the main event, plain and simple. I didn't have a problem with the 8-man match splitting up the two, because I think you need a cool down between the world title and what the just ridiculousness of that last match. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it was done for timing.
See, I think if the performers are good enough, they do their own cool down. We've talked about that before too.
Marty Scurll and Okada, perfect example.
Yeah, exactly. See what else was on here that I wasn't a big fan of the triple threat tag match.
No, I wasn't either.
I thought it was booked pretty well. I thought the Soldiers of Savagery got over a bit, and didn't end up losing. And I liked Vinny I liked Vinny's heel work afterwards. He was great. He was great. The cigar to the chest of the bouncers was awesome, or to the Beer City Bruiser was awesome. Speaking of the bouncers, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I really like the fact that they changed Malonis' name to be Brawler Malonis.
That's funny, because I was thinking the exact opposite.
Really?
I want him to be called Brian. I don't want him to be called Bruiser.
I think it makes sense to have a brawler and a bruiser be the be the bouncers.
No, and I get it. I get the reason for it, but that was one of those endearing things that I always liked about the Bouncers was that he was just Brian Malonis. He didn't have a silly nickname. He was just this big guy who was named Brian Malonis. And he went out and he crushed people. To me, that I liked that more than I liked him being called the Bruiser.
See, I guess I can see that, but my buddy that I went to the that invited me to that show last night. He asked me, on the way there, what do you think about the Bouncers? And honestly, I couldn't think of a single thing I don't like about the Bouncers.
I'm the same way. Ever since they left Silas, they're just on fire. I love everything they do. I love their entrance from the bar. I love the fact that I thought Caprice had a great one-liner when he said we need to start announcing their weight in ounces.
Yeah.
I thought that was great, and I'd love to see it. I love their interaction with the crowd. I love the fact that like in Mass Hysteria they had the toast with the Briscoes.
Yeah,
and I love
they won't shake hands before the match, but they'll do the toast after the match. Yeah.
Win or lose, they do the toast.
Yep.
And I love that the Briscoes were like, you know what? We're heels, we're horrible people, but we're going to toast you. I love the energy the two bring. I love their chemistry together. As much as it annoys me, I also love when Bruiser does his, I can't bite, I have no teeth.
Yep.
It annoys me, but at the same time, it's so endearing that I love it. It's just, you're right. There's not a thing about the Bouncers that I don't like.
Yeah, I really enjoy those guys. I'm so glad they put them together, and I'm so glad that they're an act. So I mean, I don't really know what else to say about it other than good job, guys.
Right, exactly. A great job, not just good. That's a great job they're doing together, and they're one of those teams that, like the Briscoes, that you hope just never break up. Like the Bucks, like the Briscoes, like the Revival. They're just so good as a team, you hope they never break up.
Yeah. I agree. I did, but I wasn't, and I did enjoy their match against the Briscoes, but I was not a fan of this triple threat.
What happened to Coast to Coast?
I never really liked Coast to Coast much. Did you?
I had my moments. Like, I like LSG a lot. I think he's very talented. I like the chemistry the two have together, but I just don't like where they're at right now. They seem like unfortunately, they seem like Smash Brothers did a couple years ago. They're just kind of lost in their own act.
Don't they seem more to you like Jimmy Yuta and that Cade guy?
Oh, Jason Cade?
Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, but when we first started watching those two, they were already having problems. I think they only wrestled together twice before they broke up. So we never really got to see what they could be.
Well, right, but to me, they feel like a mismatched team like that team was. I don't think that they work very well as a team. They just don't fit to me. There's something missing there.
Yeah, I guess I can see that. I can see that. Yeah, LSG seems like he would be much better suited in like an X Division type role.
Yeah, he does.
And I can see it, and I can't remember his partner's name for the life of me. And
Shaheem Ali, isn't it?
He seems like he would be a good like U.S. title holder or mid card holder,
or just a JTTS.
And that would work too, because he is a step behind the rest of them.
Yeah.
But how much of that is because of his accident too?
Yeah.
Is he fully back from that accident?
I really don't know.
Anyway.
And then we had the main event that also set up the match, the opening match the next night. So we had the Briscoes and the show the match that I opened the show talking about. So I kind of already gave my opinion on this matchup. What did you think of it?
It's my tag team match of the year.
Wow.
God and the Briscoes are insane together. they just seem to hit on every cylinder. Everything they do is great. And I can't.
So I just want to make sure are you forgetting about the NXT Takeover UK tag match that opened that?
That's why I said it might be, because right now, Mustache Mountain and I'm forgetting their names right now, but that match.
Grizzled Young Veterans.
Is that who they are?
Yeah.
This match, and I really loved when Roppongi 3K won the belts back from Shingo and Bushi. Yeah. I thought that's one of my favorite matches of the year. Tag team matches, not regular matches. And also the Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks from Double or Nothing.
Right.
Those might be my 4 top matches right now for tag teams. But this is definitely right in the conversation. I thought, as far as a street fight goes, you couldn't have asked for better. I get annoyed, and TNA or Impact, and forgive me, it's going to be years before I stop calling them TNA, sure. But Impact, where they got it wrong when they had that Hurricane match, triple threat match between the North and LAX and the Rascals. I think everything that the Briscoes and GOD did in this New York City street fight was top of the notch. It was everything was perfectly done. Perfectly done. Mark Briscoe's a fucking maniac.
I texted you this the other day, but good God, did he close in that match?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So let's pick up from what I was saying in the opener. He gets hit with the Magic Killer on the steel chairs, and Jay has already been put through 2 tables on the outside, so he's completely out of the match at this point. And Briscoe kicks out. And then the Suffolk County Chicken gets put on the top rope, and they're ready to do their new finisher, which is the Super Power Bomb.
Gifted from Gato, or
Gato gifted it to them. Yep.
Gato and Jado.
Yeah. And so they do the Super Power Bomb. Tama Tonga turns around during the middle of it, so he misses the fact that Mark turns it into a beautiful Hurricane Rana, throwing Tongaloa onto the chairs. And then Mark goes crazy on Tama Tonga, and then Jay gets back into the match and gets stuff going on. And then the match finishes with an absolutely fucking insane Doomsday double stomp through a table.
Off a ladder.
Off of a ladder. I mean,
yeah,
good
it was
God.
Sick.
And when Riccaboni called it a leg drop the next night. I thought it was a double stomp. He thought it was a leg drop. Either way, it's one of the most insane fucking things I've ever seen.
I still think it was. I thought it was a double stomp too, because it was. He hit that Doomsday Destroyer and then double stomped him on the way down. It was just. Mark Briscoe was the MVP of this match.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
And we had just talked about the same day that we both watched it, about how much fans we were of Jay. But
right. Well, yeah, that's right. We were when we were walking to the car that night. Or after that, we were talking about how Jay was the guy that is the Ric Flair of Ring of Honor. He's the guy that is always capable of putting on a great match. You always count on him to deliver in spots, and he's just great. Where
I had also said, like, you know, as we were reading, exactly as we were going to, I said, but Mark's been improving a lot, and then Mark was just stepped up and was a beast in this one.
Oh, he was the MVP of this match, and I thought, going into this, I mean, Tongaloa has a lot still to learn. He's still really green. But I kind of felt like Jay and Tama Tonga were kind of the top level, and then Mark was a step below, and Tongaloa was, a step below him. But Mark Briscoe was straight up the MVP of this match.
Yeah. Totally agree.
That power bomb that he took through Jay on the table on the outside is still just one of those moments where I'm like, holy shit, I know I've seen that move before, but never done like that.
Oh, and what about when Mark set up the table when Jay was getting Tongaloa ready for something, and then Tama Tonga runs over and hits Jay with the Singapore cane, and then Mark sees what's going on, and that his brother's going to get beat down, but the table's in his way, and so he capoeira's his way around it. That was just amazing.
Yeah, it really was.
Just a great spot.
I think I watched that match three times.
And then the spot where Jay, we talked about so much about poise with Mike Awesome when we did our Patreon show about ECW last week, and we saw the same thing from Mark this week, where Jay went to throw him the championship belt to hit Tama Tonga with, and the belt sailed away from him out of the ring. And did Mark panic? No, he picked up a chair and threw it right in the face of Tama Tonga.
Yeah, there was a lot of very good improvisation. I mean, Mark was on point, and it wasn't his wife due to give birth the next day.
Something like that, yeah.
They talked about how he had asked for the night of Mass, the one in Lowell.
Yeah, right.
He asked for it off because his wife has given birth. So his head was not necessarily in this match, but what a damn professional.
Absolutely.
Just outstanding by Mark. In the kind of performance that he put on can easily jump him up into my MVP Wrestler of the Year type thing. If he can do other performances like that, I don't see why he couldn't be my Performer of the Year.
Yeah. Whether he gets the chance or not, I guess we'll see. But yeah, I mean, we've got these two teams coming up again in 10 days from now.
Yep, at a ladder match.
In a ladder war.
They're doing a ladder war.
Doing a ladder war, yeah, in Toronto.
God, if we could just get the Bucks in there somehow. or even the Addiction. One of those two teams in there.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, brother. I don't remember what I was going to say now, but yeah, I mean those two teams in a ladder war are going to be just if it's anywhere close to as great as they were in a street fight, it's going to be awesome. Oh, I know what I was going to say is that Mark is not the only pro wrestler that we're a fan of whose wife is pregnant right now. Ross Von Erich, his wife is also.
Really?
Expecting, yes.
The Von Erichs, and I still think Marshall is a future superstar. I just think he is one of those guys that has everything. He just needs to get the experience. But yeah, that's cool that there's a couple of people expecting kids here.
Yeah, and MLW is being so understanding about the fact that his wife is pregnant, and their dad still needs their help on a regular basis, and so rather than wanting them to relocate closer to their New York offices, they're actually flying them back and forth from Hawaii for the shows.
Nice. As a father and someone who had employers that didn't really get it, kudos to MLW.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
And kudos to the Von Erichs also for sticking around, and instead of relocating, sticking around because they know their dad needs them.
Right. Exactly. One thing that I do want to say, and I literally just found this out, Alexander Hammerstone, MLW national champion, who I think is another one of those along Marshall Von Erich that is a megastar. He's a megastar in the making. He has been announced for Noah's N1 Victory Tournament,
which is like their version of the G1, right?
Yeah, it used to be called the Global League. Now it's their version of the G1, which is a huge thing for him. This is a guy that's come a long, long way in 6 months.
Yeah, I was saying a very short time.
Yeah, and he's every bit of worth it too. I mean, he's a Greek god, basically, the way he's built, and he's got so much talent in the ring. He's so good on the mic that this is a guy, if anybody, that's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's, you know, when you say blue chip wrestling prospect, he should be in the, you know, whose pictures in the dictionary for it.
Yep, above Eli Isom, who I still think is good, but not on Hammerstone's level.
No, not at all.
So,
Let's see, anything else? I don't think I had anything else on this card. I mean, I did not think I thought the Mayhem was a pretty good card, actually.
I did too. I mean, it had. I would say out of the matches, I really liked every single one of them for different reasons. Obviously, I think Flip his heel performance kind of stole the show in that 8-man. I loved the Taven King interaction, not only in their interview but in the match itself. I thought Jay Lethal was just kind of thrown in there, but I felt like it was a good match. Roosh and TK O'Ryan was phenomenal. Dragon Lee, Jonathan Gresham, I thought was good, even though I know how much you hate Dragon Lee. And I loved the Bouncer's performance. Just straight up loved it. I'm not a fan of SOS or Coast to Coast, but I loved the Bouncers.
Yeah, me too. They're great. You know, one thing I really liked about the triple threat match is that once again, Kenny King got the better of Jay Lethal. He just happened to not get the better of Matt Taven.
Anytime Kenny King can get one up on Jay Lethal, I'm happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Which sucks because I used to be a big Jay Lethal fan. And you've turned me, you asshole.
You know, who is that pitcher for the Dodgers? I'm trying to think of his name.
Clayton Kershaw?
Clayton Kershaw, yeah. I think that Jay Lethal, you know, is kind of like, you know, the reverse Taylor Swift for you. Because Clayton Kershaw once said, if you don't like Taylor Swift, you're fooling yourself. and I would say that if you like Jay Lethal, you were fooling yourself.
There was a time when Jay Lethal was amazing.
As the TV champ, never as the world champ.
I loved his run his first run as the world champ too.
Yeah,
I don't know what to say. I thought the way he made Adam Cole look was amazing.
Yeah, you keep pointing that out, but that's one match.
Anyway.
Anyway, so I really did not dig on the 8-man tag. I never really do dig on 8-man tags. They got to be really special for me to love. But you know, I mean, we had a great world title match. We had a great tag title match. We had a great Taven promo.
Great Taven promo.
The Bouncers in the Kingdom were awesome. So, you know, what more can you really ask for?
To be honest, I did not like the 8-man tag match. And like you, once it gets to a certain amount of players, it's just it's got to be really special because you know it's just going to be a car wreck waiting to happen. But the performance out of Flip Gordon in that match and his villain performance was so phenomenal that match actually got like a step or two up for me because of how great Flip was during that match.
That makes sense. Maybe I should have to go back and rewatch that because I have to say I was honestly kind of dozing off just because that type of match just doesn't interest me.
I mean, Marty Scurll is always great every time he hits the ring. Brody King is amazing. Haskins, PJ Black, Bandito, they're all amazing. I'm still not sold on Tracy Williams. PCO still has issues for me, but Flip, I thought, stole the show. And he didn't do much. It's not like he was in the ring putting on this gutsy performance. It's not like he did a whole lot outside the ring. But the little tiny bits that he did were so great at putting over this heel character that he's developing that it just stole the entire match for me.
Yeah, and you know, and you know, you listed all the great talent that was in the match, and that's all true. But I mean, you could put like, you know, Hall, Nash, Hulk Hogan, and the Giant on one side against Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Chris Jericho, and or it says, let's say the Undertaker and Triple H, and I still wouldn't give a shit. It's still an 8-man tag.
Yeah, I'm the same way. You could have all 4 of the Horsemen against all 4 DX, and I'd be like, whatever. It's 4-man tag. It's formulatic, but I don't know. Unless it's a car wreck or something super special, I'm right there with you. And the talent they had in this match should have been a great match on paper, but it's an 8-man tag. It's like you said, it's an 8-man tag. That's why what Flip Gordon was able to do really stuck out to me.
Gotcha. So what we have coming up later on this week is we will be reviewing, watching and reviewing When Worlds Collide, which is the second ECW Super Show.
I'm already halfway through it, and I'm already having issues.
Okay. Well, that's
just saying.
We can't love them all, right?
Well, no, it's not that I'm not loving it. It's just it's kind of like the last one we did, where there's so much to digest. There's so much greatness that it's hard to really. There's so much greatness with such bad people, bad players, that it's hard to really comprehend what I'm seeing. I mean, you're seeing the evolution of Sandman. You're seeing Mikey Whipwreck, who, by the way, is still one of my favorite characters of all time. Anybody that can win titles without having a single offensive move is that's just brilliant. So I've seen a couple of the matches, and a couple are great, a couple are eh. But at the end of the day, I'm still looking at going, what the hell am I watching? This is just some amazing stuff that is probably 20 years ahead of its time.
And we're watching it 24 years.
20 some years. Yeah, 20 some years later. It's something that if it were on TV right now, I'd be loving every second of it.
Yeah, and I'm planning on watching the show tomorrow night. So you're a little bit ahead of me. And then we're also going to be talking about Thor. And a couple of years ago, when we were doing our old show that Jeff has put on the archives on our Patreon channel, which you can listen to for what, $5 a month, Jeff?
$7.50 for that one.
$7.50 for that tier. Okay, so we reviewed a Marvel show called Jessica Jones, and we absolutely loved that show.
Well,
for the first 8 episodes.
8 episodes, yeah.
And then it just kind of fell apart. And it's kind of been a pattern among Marvel shows that they do that basically they're just writing too many episodes for what the story really will support. But we thought, we watched that one season, we should watch the second season, and probably the third season. So we're going to be reviewing that on our bi-weekly shows as well.
And not the full season, because we're going to be doing other stuff. We're only doing 1 episode at a time.
Yeah, 1 episode every 2 weeks, and basically that's how I feel like television should be anyway. I think they should have sister shows where you're sharing a time slot, and the shows are airing every other week, and that way you're never going to have reruns. You're never going to have long hiatuses in shows, but I'm not a network executive, and I don't care about upfronts and tweaks. So things aren't the way that I firmly believe they should be. So, but anyway, that's what we're going to do. And then, did I mention Thor?
One of us did, I think. Okay, Thor. We're doing Thor too.
We left off with Thor and read it. Thor God of Thunder issues 12 through 17, I think.
Yeah, it's the latest arc. We did 1 through 11. There were 2 arcs, and we're going to do the 3rd arc now.
Yeah, so 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, so 12 through 17. So
that's coming up. That's coming up this week on Patreon. Also on Patreon, and everybody, if you're a fan of this show, or if you even just like us and you want to help us out slightly, go to patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. Multiple tiers are set up for you to join, and each tier gives you everything the previous tier did plus something new. So like our $1 tier, which is the lowest tier, and the reason I put it up is because if you're like me, supporting a show you want to do, but you really can't because when you look at what donations are, they're like $10, $15. Honestly, I can't afford $15 a month. I don't know, and that's just me. So I set up a dollar tier. It's where you can find all the articles that I've ever written on my blog. I'm currently in negotiations with the Sportster to get all of my articles, the stuff that I wrote and copywritten, trying to get them from the Sportster so I can put them on there as well. And I know Shane has written a lot of articles throughout the years on Lords of Pain Radio that if he ever gets a chance to, we're going to put them on there. It's $1 a month for the articles. A great way to support us and help us out so that we can continue to put out this kind of stuff. All of our archives, you get every archive show we've ever done all the way back to 2015. And you get access to the articles for $5 a month. For $7 a month, I did actually lower that from $7.50 to $7. You get not only our articles and the archives, but you get access to our non-wrestling shows, which we just talked about. This week coming up is Thor and the first episode of season 2 of Jessica Jones. For $8 a month, you get access to our history tier, which is in addition to those other 3 tiers. You get those, plus you also get every time we review a classic wrestling show. Right now, we are doing the ECW series, so that'll be up on our Patreon coming this week. We had our last one, which is already up there. And then for $10, which is our top tier, you get access to every bit of content that we put on Patreon, and our that $10 tier gets you access to the Wrecked with Wrestlers series, which is basically a legacy series. We're looking at a single wrestler. We're deciding what we feel each are our 4 favorite matches, and then we get together, talk about the guy's career, and talk about each of our 4 matches. The one coming up here next is actually going to be Sugar Shane Helms, or the Hurricane, or whatever you want to call him. He is an innovator when it comes to wrestling. He's going to be the next legacy series we review. We've already done Rob Van Dam. We've done Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. And that is all on our Patreon site. It's www.patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search Kingdom of Honor. It's easy to find. Find us on Twitter. I'm at Regi Co-op. He's at Zanman LOP. Best way to find that is just use hashtag Kingdom of Honor. I do check that multiple times a day and answer any questions that come up. And of course, our YouTube channel. Whenever we get the inkling, we jump on and talk about whatever's on our mind as far as pro wrestling goes. So, check out those things. And also, we're still doing this Twitter thing, Twitter poll, where we're asking for your favorite champions of all time. We're eventually going to set up a tournament, March Madness style tournament, that pits the 100 greatest champions of all time to see if we can whittle it down to the top. So check that out on Twitter and also on Facebook. I think that's it.
Yeah, we originally were going to try to do the Sugar Shane Helms show this week, but then we thought we need a lot more time to research his best matches are.
It's just he's had so many great ones, and he was such an innovator that we have to actually research it. We can't just jump on and do it.
Exactly. And make sure you stay tuned to all the other Lords of Pain radio shows this week. So tomorrow, I think the Global Revolution might be back. On Wednesday, we have Sports Entertainment is Dead. On Thursday, Imp's LOP Radio Adventure. On Friday, The Right Side of the Pond. On Saturday, nothing. On Sunday, nothing. And then on Monday, we'll be back with you to talk about, I believe, World Class Revolution and maybe some of the G1.
Nice.
Depends how much I'm able to get watched this week. So, until next time, this is Shane saying long days, pleasant nights, and Jeff saying
goodbye.
G1 Climax 27. Goodbye and good night.